Ken Holland, and Ken has been a regular here at Performance Poets. Um, Ken Holland has had work widely published in such journals as Rattle, Atlanta Review, and Pedestal Magazine. He was awarded first place in several competitions, including New Ohio Review, Kim at a Atanasio, you guys know her name, judged it. His chapbook, Rust and Slag, was a finalist in the 2025 Concrete Wolf competition, as well as the 2025 Moonstone Press competition, which Moonstone subsequently published that chapbook. His poem, Sepia Life, was a finalist in Bicoastal Review's 2025 contest. He's been nominated 3 times for the Pushcart Prize and lives in the mid-Hudson Valley of New York. You can find more about Ken at his website, which I believe Judy will put in the chat, and his poem, The Hooves of My Conscience, was recently accepted by South Florida Poetry Journal. Congratulations, Ken. And with that, please.
And thanks to South Florida Poetry Journal. And that recent acceptance was as recent as like yesterday, so it's still warm. Well, Judy and Susanna, I feel like I'm on the long goodbye tour now for Performance Poets, so who knew? Okay, let me dig right in. I know, usually you say between 20 and 25 minutes for the readers. I'm right in there somewhere, so all goes well. This first poem is called A Table for One, Please. I came into the restaurant and asked if I could sit at the corner table, and you said, "Of course, follow me." I came into the restaurant and asked if I could sit at the corner table, and you said, "Sorry, no. Would you like a table by the window?" I came into the restaurant and asked if I could sit at the corner table, and you told me to be careful. I've made enough bad decisions. I came into the restaurant and asked if I could sit, and you said my suit needs a shave and my shoes refuse to shine. I came into the restaurant and asked if I could sit, and you said only if I do that trick where I levitate above the stairs. I came into the restaurant and left my horse parked out front at a busted meter. I came into the restaurant where the patrons were applauding the chef's nightly self-immolation. I walk into the restaurant carrying my own tectonic plates, needing only a napkin and some silverware. I walk into the restaurant where the groom has forgotten to propose to the bride. I walk in and ask why the moon sitting at the bar is drinking so heavily. I walk in and bring the rain too lonely to have waited outside. I walk in and sidestep the table where calamity is seated. I walk in and see myself at the table in the corner, as if I'd arranged just such a meeting. This next one's called, thank you, called Recapitulation. In the speculative yearbook of youthful suicide, here's a class photo of those who were deeply desperate, yet managed to survive. In the speculative yearbook of racial equality, Blacks have given whites the right to vote, as long as they don't get too uppity. In the speculative yearbook of hardcore nativism, prayerful evangelicals have forgiven God for fathering a son with the olive tint of an immigrant. In the speculative yearbook of wildebeest migration, the instinct of fear has finally passed in the wake of the days of mass deportation. In the speculative yearbook of marital relations, the person next to me is still a stranger, but no longer leaves the bed when I ask if I can touch her. In the speculative yearbook of artificial intelligence, The line AI has offered to complete this poem fails to distinguish which intelligence is more alone. Thank you. I know Mike heard this poem sometime back at a Woodstock reading, no less. Might ring a bell, at least for one. It's called Yard Sale, where nothing's for sale. It's all free. Thank you for stopping. Please have a look. Here are a few of the things you'll find. The notarized declaration of my best friend, testifying he's no longer my best friend, had never been, and I'm no longer allowed to camp out on his front lawn. Piled over there are the various bones my various dogs buried over the years, along with an empty can of beer and the unnamed emotion that caused me to dig them back up. And here a pair of child-sized boxing gloves from when I was 5 and tried to knock my father out with a flurry of blows to his chest. How he carried one of those punches for 50 years before it blossomed into a heart attack. As for the suitcase lying in the grass, I'd long ago packed it with 10 pounds of empathy and a half-pound of cruelty. And who's to say which of the two will have met its match? I'm also giving away my vocabulary, as God can't abide words dressed in the rippling silk of a question. But belief would never have the trappings of faith, if not for a flourish of fashion. Still, I see you're walking away with nothing more than my emptiness, though I admire how you handle the weight. You've helped what's left of me to be spoken for. So please, when you leave, kindly close the gate. Here's a poem with billiards as a metaphor. It's called to be cornered in your pocket. So you're waiting for me to reach out and touch you with my poem. Sure, why not? Here's the poem taped to the butt end of a pool cue, and here's the tip of the stick prodding you in the chest. I hope you don't mind the blue chalk marks. I hope you have some idea what my poem is trying to say, because all it's saying to me is 3 balls in the corner pocket. No easy shot. It calls for you to be quiet, so please, be quiet. I'm not very good at this, and it doesn't help that you're all watching. There are certain laws of physics at play here, cause and effect, momentum and its peevish reluctance to change, action and reaction, as when I slap myself in the face, how in a mirror it appears I'm slapping myself back, which is the way any heart works, half of it pushing out blood, the other half pulling it back in, then kissing the blood with air before shoving it back out the door. Or the way I'm hoping the cue ball will kiss the smooth left cheek of the 3 ball, the blush it brings to its ivory skin as it swoons toward a space where we'd all like to fall. So, the next poem is called a poem whose title is in italics, because on the written page, the repeated phrase is in italics. So, going out of business forever, everything must go. And how true is that? No one stays in business forever. Who'd even want to? Even the sun will put everything on sale in 5 billion years. and the earth will be priced for the cheap trinket that it is. Going out of business forever, everything must go, and whatever remains unsold will be left out on the street, because it's unbelievable what you can build shelter from these days. All those rare earth minerals, nothing decomposes anymore, not even the contaminants in the drinking water. Going out of business forever, everything must go. And once it's all gone, the small but ineluctable joy we'll have in taking our business elsewhere. Still able to walk out with a large screen and a bag of potato chips and go home to watch a celebrity astrophysicist gleefully recount the steps by which a star in its death throes goes nova and scintillates the night sky, as any fire sale would do, and as God often does when he wants to catch our wandering eye. Thank you. So I put this next poem more or less in the middle because it's the longest. So if you endure through this, it's like Hump Wednesday. It's called For Your Consideration. When you were growing up a millennium or two ago, there were sneakers called PF Flyers, and the TV commercial would show some kid just your age running across a yard. And Jesus, yes, his shoes sprouted wings, and that kid took to the sky. And consider how those sneakers found their way under the Christmas tree. And what would have happened later that day if your parents hadn't talked you down from the ledge of your bedroom window? How you might very well have flown instead of learning it was all a lie. And how you'd come to distrust everything after that. Even your dog when she took your wrist in her mouth, the bed on fire, the door bricked up. And if it was a dream, and all dreams are lies, how to account for the smell of her burning fur? So you might want to consider just how you ever managed to become a meaningful adult, although no one's ever asked you exactly what meaning you're full of. People just nod their heads or pat you on the back as much to say, good boy, such a good boy, and leave it at that. And consider of all the dinosaurs that didn't make it through the great extinction 66 million years ago, only the birds did. Who knows how? A 6-mile wide rock dropping from the sky at 67,000 miles per hour, cratering with the force of 100 trillion tons of TNT, a billion nuclear bombs, pile driving 25 miles through the crust into the Earth's mantle, leaving a crater 100 miles wide, obliterating every family of dinosaur except one. All that fire, all that brimstone, a Bible's worth of nuclear winter. And when you were a kid, it wasn't yet known that birds are dinosaurs. And even now, there's no real consensus as to how they survived. But you know how. Those ancient birds simply leaned down and laced up their sneakers, and like any other kid, sprinted hard across the yard and lifted into the black and white sky of a Magnavox console television set, manufacture date circa 1962, on a day that was the last to hold the kind of world you still thought to be true. Thank you. It's over. So that chapbook of mine, the first and only book of mine, I of course want to give you, well, looks like this. Give you a taste of the kind of poems that are in it. Certainly, more or less the wonder years, if you will, those of growing up, which pretty much most, if not everybody, covers. This is called On Whatever Day in Whatever Summer of 1960 something. My father is doing a hula dance, a crackling patina of celluloid, his arms like wings in fluttery waves. Was there music behind the silence? Was my mother singing? A hand rises into the camera's field of view. Mine or my brother's were less than a cameo appearance to my father's rare abandon. Behind him, smoke from a charcoal grill, gray patties of meat in a monochrome world. On a day like no other day he lived, at a cottage in the Catskills, burgers burning a hole through the frame of his memory. So, thank you. Excuse me if I just toggle my nose here. That wasn't for the poem. that's just sinuses. So again, like so many of us don't know what to do about this country. But while this next poem is dark, there's at least a slight reverence and a title that obviously riffs off, if it actually doesn't rip off Walt Whitman, probably rip off. It's called I Sing the Body Blue. Come on, babe. These are waves frozen in Lake Huron. This is winter singing like a castrato. Stars are shedding their light at the speed of God, and the earth is turning away like a shy spinster. Constellations hurtling apart till they'll have disfigured the myth of their shape. The way autumn has escaped with its cartography of colors, the final burn of its breath. Industrial cities are strung out along the shore, demanding their due of America's rust and bounty. Steam from factory stacks is punched down by the frigid weight of air. Power grids ride the circuitry of our bodies, illumine the flash of our hearts. I'm not here to mythologize the electric leaves of song. This is not that century. For we're now bound in by that which appeared boundless, vistas obscene in their limitless depths, blast furnaces burning away the impurities of iron to spill forth steel. Like a thoroughbred pressed once too hard toward an unsustainable victory, we now carry the mark of a cripple. Motionless in a field of ice-stunted grass, the animal's rhythmic breath distills as white vapor into the blue air. The sky cradling winter in its arms. These the last hours to stand reverent before a country that yet carries grace in its stillness. In the sculpted arrest of Huron's waves, in myths and constellations, the architecture of America. Well, from there it seemed, thank you. From there it seems appropriate to segue into the outright post-apocalyptic. This is called High Tide and Full Moon in Paradise. I'm waiting for the rain to grow tired enough to put itself down. The rivers are flooded with ill will and shopping carts freed from Walmart servitude. People stop talking about the apocalypse the moment it becomes one. People stop taking out the garbage when they see what's floating in their backyard. Outside my window, the rivering street rivers to the left, while my neighbor across the way sees the street rivering to the right and refuses to understand how it could be the same river. I'm reading a book on the means and methods of early seafarers. I'm reading my DNA for trace elements of Polynesian blood. My orchid has pinned a tropical flower above its ear. My Persian is stalking the mirage of a dry oasis. I've come to enjoy the mystery of dinner once the labels have all soaked off, while my wine still has the grace notes of the last vintage blessed by drought. My neighbor swims over and asks if he can borrow a cup of mercy. My neighbor swims back with my gun, which his lawyer will use to execute his last will and testament, as a jury is convened to bear witness that no one's yet pled guilty to living in a state of innocence. Two more poems, if the indulgence will last. So this last one it's short, but it's a triptych, basically. It's actually in three sections as opposed to stanzas, but that was just a willful choice on my part. It's called At Last. I should have, in her later years, danced for my mother in jester robes, to have gifted her a laugh, to have listened again to the rain draw near. I should have, in his later years, sung for my father a sea shanty's salty air, to have gifted him a taste of travel, a risque lyrics souvenir. I should have, in her youngest years, dressed in a dress for my daughter, in the style of an operetta, to have gifted her a foolish aria, to have held close her nascent fears. And so I'm going to end on this last poem, apropos of a chapbook that I am reading here. I don't think I've read this. I know I haven't anywhere yet. So it's called The Poet Hawks His Books at Yet Another Reading. Dear listeners, a few of you who are here, let's start again. Dear listeners, the few of you who are here, thank you for your light and half-hearted applause. Please, I have a handful of book sale, which are arrayed on the folding table in the back of the room, a table I promised to return to the church for their biannual bake sale. The copies I brought are not the copies I meant to bring. The ones I left at home have pages gold-leafed and scented, with words that glow with bioluminescence for more pleasurable bedtime reading. The ones I left at home have a sticker affixed, listing all the awards I've yet to achieve. The ones I left at home have lived singular lives of bachelorhood, though they were romantically conceived. And I believe there's much in each that would have pleased you, and would have done so for a price so lyrical, it begs to be believed. Thank you, thank you. And yeah, again, Judy and Susanna for what turned out to be the honor of being, again, part of the long swan song. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ken, for being willing to be a feature again for us. And thank you for your thought-provoking work. Guys, the chat is now open, and so now's the time that you can let Ken know how you enjoyed his work. And we like to keep that closed down while the poets are reading so that it's not distracting. So we'll just give it a moment while you do that.
And a moment for certainly me, in my mind, to gear up to hear Jude, which is my own personal pleasure.
Right. Okay. So let me introduce our next featured reader. Jude Marr, he, him, is a pushcart nominated trans poet and an editor with Animal Heart Press. His poetry has appeared in many journals and anthologies, and his next book, Silence Will Not Save Us, should see daylight in 2027. He also has published Breakfast for the Birds with Finishing Line Press and We Know Each Other by Our Wounds by Animal Heart Press. He now lives in Coimbra, Portugal. And with that, I give you Jude.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. Um, I'm going to share my screen in a sec, but I just wanted to say a couple of things first. First of all, Judy and Susanna, thank you so much for asking me to do this again. I also did not know that this was going to be a long farewell. I hope you know how much it means to all of us, I'm sure, but especially to me to be a part of this community and also SoFlo Pojo, where I do turn up sometimes, and Cultivating Voices, and there are others, Wild and Precious Life I go to, and it's really important for me because it's how I maintain at least the illusion of still being part of the US poetry community, even though it's several years since I actually lived over there. I think I will always feel that way. I don't feel like I can actually travel to the US at the moment, but hopefully it won't be too many more years before I can again. So I won't be at AWP this year, which is really bumming me out, to be honest, because I keep seeing lots of people I know, including some I haven't seen for years, who are all going. Um, but anyway, so this is, it allows me to continue to be a part of all of that. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm going to share my screen, not just for the words. I mean, because I don't usually, I always feel like I should because people like to be able to read the words, but also because I have some pictures in there this time, because I'm going to read some poems that allude to where I now live. And I thought you might like to see some pictures. So I put those in as well. And the reason why also I wanted to include the pictures and talk a little bit about this is because I am currently struggling still with the notion of what it is that I can possibly write about, given all of the things that we are currently living through. And what I find is that living from my country to your country to this country where I now am perching, at least for now, um, is that um, is that I end up having all of the stuff from all of those countries in my head all at once. And so I don't know anymore how to write even the sort of relatively oblique but more overtly political stuff that I used to write. So I haven't written that much recently, and I've been struggling. That's why. And I haven't published much because I haven't submitted much. And so and so it goes on, and people forget that I exist. Anyway, so I'm trying to get out of that downward spiral by remembering that for me, poetry is about understanding, or it's about modeling, and therefore hopefully understanding complexity. And I think that this is political because I think that at the heart of so much of what's wrong is an inability or an unwillingness to embrace and understand and accept complexity. So, everything has to be simple and straightforward and made easier, and actually none of it is. None of it is. And so I've decided that what I can do is to just write what I can write about my own life mostly, and some eco stuff as well, and try and model that complexity. So that's what's coming, just so you're warned. And I've taken up some of my time by doing that, so there will probably be a fewer points. But anyway, here we go. Hopefully this will work. See what I'm going to share here. Okay. Right. So this is all fairly new stuff, and there's one or two in here that some of you may have heard before, for which I apologize. I always forget to write down what I've read where. But anyway, begin with a few that are more general. And there are several poems that I have that are something or other in the Age of Dictators. And this one is Narcissus in the Age of Dictators. Thinking I can't live in my own image, thinking I remember insignificance, I invent God for God, a headless deity who absorbs me, never believing. Every day I think I am God, in my coffee, in my closet, in my underwear. If I can move to be under empty sky, move to a place of sliding water, will I still live with the grave images I see in secret pools? Adrift in the age of dictators. Ships are trees, bodies are water, heart songs are fire. We are, because liquid, this world our container. I take breath from the bottom of the sky, watch bodies fall, a billion cadences, rhythms of lost years. Particles of plastic sift through air, sweet as civet or salt-tinged, resting or in motion, catching light. They drift, an ocean of crescent-shaped specks, where seabirds flail, remote, entangled, moons in the stomachs of birds. The secret life of trees. If a tree falls in the forest, crashing through branches to land on a thick blanket of the predeceased, sodden bodies of every leaf, every needle, every bud, now rotted down into the richest mulch. If the tree lands with a thud, a slight rebound, then comes to rest, its branches meshed with neighbor trees, its roots exposed, naked, and torn, do the other trees mourn? Do the fallen have time to send a last report or turn their leaves toward the sun again before the end of perpendicularity? When communication stops, a signal lost, a line gone dead, root wires unearthed and abruptly silent, is the forest forewarned? When a tree settles, gouged and broken into the record of its past, old sounds re-emerge, windsong and scuttering, and the tree, bark pressed against the living earth, hears everything the forest knows. Most of the universe is darkness. On desert farmland, an empty nest, the tree make-believe, the falling egg. But at the horizon, more sea than grass, a meadow where winter's body also shifts under one sun's scalpel. As cold scarred lungs heavy up to take the day's first breath, a ragged fence, collapsed, rises up again as tree. Spring in the age of dictators. Plants surge beneath a network of birds. That one is actually going to be in a journal fairly soon, in a UK journal called Acropolis. Okay, this is the first Coimbra poem, which is actually one that I wrote before I moved here, so over a year ago. Manifestation as a first step. I imagine walking to Compostela, From the home I also imagine in Coimbra, Portugal, a pilgrim without faith except in possibility, a traveler old enough to calculate how many breaths remain undrawn, subtracted from steps not yet taken. I imagine an apartment in Coimbra, Portugal, a city with an ancient university, a red city in a country that knows, from recent memory, how to unseat a dictator with a song. I imagine walking from Coimbra to Compostela, shirtless, with my apartment key, with time enough to breathe in a country with no memories of former me, and the ocean on my left, and at my heels, always, a small black dog. That was, as you might say, the rose-tinted view. And this is Coimbra. I did not take this photograph. I think it's probably got a filter on it, to be honest. And that's the view that you will usually see, which is the ancient medieval part of the city. That's the university up at the top of the hill there. And on the left of the picture is the Baixa, the old lower city or downtown area. And that first part of it there on the left of the picture, as you look at it, behind those big buildings in the front, that's where I live. I obviously also didn't take this photograph. This is looking down on where I live. That big church in the middle is São Bartolomeu, and the building next to it with the sort of speckled effect tiles. There's a street in between, and behind that speckled tiled building is the little alleyway where I live, right there. The sun was shining on us today also. This is the name of the street where I live, Beco das Prazeres. My Portuguese accent, by the way, is really, really bad. Even pronouncing the name of the street where I live. And this is what it looks like. The top part, that building on the left with the laundry hanging is my building, and that is my laundry. So I did take that picture. As you can see, it's hard to take a good picture because it's very narrow, the buildings are really tall, and it's quite dark as well because we don't get direct sunlight. It's quite a short street. Anyway, so there we are. That's what you can picture. And this is always leaving. I left that other apartment, the one with fist holes in the dry wall, after a drain clogged in the courtyard and spewed raw sewage across stone flags. I did not know the owner of the fist, and although there must have been rats in the neighborhood, I never met one. I have often said goodbye to squirrels, but never with regret. I did not feel that I knew them, even when they danced along power lines, tapped across my tin roof, and I confess I once set traps for a rat whose only crime was to run through my shortcut of a living room, heading for a storm drain. The trap worked. That rat made me a murderer. I have moved on, more or less, willingly, 19 times so far, from sublet to sublet, studio to studio, from apartments with histories but no ghosts, from one perfect, for me, blue cottage with an overgrown yard and an orange cat. I left the orange cat, but not because he was also a murderer. Now I live in one room, which has all I need, a window that opens on a slice of sky and the city beyond. And I still remember the house where I began, every distant detail etched sharp as acid, the black cat left to die alone in a stone-floored scullery, the mice behind baseboards scrabbling with intent, the doors all closed. Seeing is not believing. The old photographs are gone, although I suppose their residue may exist in some landfill, a curl of faded summers, a smile overexposed. Some of those snapped lives are gone, also to dust, although others persist as far as I know. And I have no regrets when I recall the act of making albums into trash, stamping on odd images that dropped, their mounts detached, my boot heel hard against some version of the past, nothing stuck in the gutters of my soul. Pros and cons. February is not kind when red umbrellas jostle over sidewalks, slick with broken sentences. Where those figures huddled under trash at the Modern Art Museum all have dice for eyes. Where the sky shifts, uneasy and ragged, cats pad from street to street, pitiless. February, then, is rust and pollen smear, a time of weird, each breath the last price paid. But in February, I have also flown against unkindness to a place where red umbrellas blaze, where a broken sentence shifts uneasy in my mouth, each breath an urge, where the street cats live to dance, where a river coils, complacent as a snake. I should say that just over a week ago, on Friday the 13th, to be precise, I genuinely thought for a little while that we were going to have to evacuate from here because the river was about a foot from topping over, and the dam up the river from here, hydroelectric dam, they weren't sure whether they would be able to avoid releasing a very large amount of water into the river, which would then have consequences further downstream. It was okay, but only just. Room with a view. These small streets, narrow and cobbled buildings made vertiginous through proximity, each street a personality. My street named, in translation, the Alley of Pleasures, in case you were wondering, tucked and tiled behind gelato and bubble tea, also Korean barbecue. My street can be a sanctuary, less formal than our neighbor, São Bartolomeu, but sometimes a shortcut from commerce to calm, to a backwater of young men in doorways, pigeons and strollers, laundry hanging from windows overhead. From my third-floor window, I can see a slice of street life without being seen. I could fall if I ever wanted to fall, but today I am content to observe the cracks, like slashes down aged walls, a glimpse of sun that angles toward my drying sheet and towel, and the woman who, with her life in shopping bags, stands by the church and sings. Just a couple more quick ones now. I know for sure that I've read this one to you before, but I'm going to read it again because I also have for you this time a photograph of the tree in question. And this one's going to be in Whale Road Review in a few months' time. In the Botanic Garden at Coimbra, Portugal. The azaleas are blooming, lurid pink and shameless. They remind me of Tallahassee, of a tiny blue cottage and an orange cap that belonged to no one but seemed to like my company in that other life. Now, in this botanic garden where plants purr under the soft feet of bees and age-stained stone endures in dank corners amid the gothic of it all and the hot pink azaleas, I find a peace that is unearned in the presence of a stricken tree, split open and exposed, hollowed out but clinging to life. Those who tend to the garden have tenderly propped this old tree, which now rests almost horizontal on 4 wooden posts. The guardians have also placed a neat rope fence around the tree's hollowness to preserve the dignity of age and injury among the azaleas, the camellias, the soaring hope. And now the hollow tree has no choice but to live. And this is the tree. I did take this photograph also. I should say that the flooding and the year's worth of a rain within a couple of weeks that we have just had, not just here, but throughout Portugal, was preceded by a serious storm from the Atlantic, which a cyclonic storm, which did a lot of damage at the Botanic Garden where this tree is. And I haven't been able to go back and check to see how the tree's doing. I'm a bit concerned because it's not really very, it's a bit precarious, shall we say. So watch this space. If I find out more, I'll let you know. This is the last poem. A meditation on possibility. Every day begins another flight for those of us who live on the wing, a feather in search of a dove. Some days I pick up feathers, lay their barbs against my roughening cheek. Love is not possible for those of us born without a heart. Still, conflict is a choice. Each day a fist or a hand uncurled. Each day's passing makes less the sum of those that remain. Every day I resolve into a feather or a quill. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude, and thank you for screen sharing. What a treat to see those